My faith and love shattered into pieces right at my own wedding. I was standing at the altar, all smiles and nerves, watching my bride glide down the aisle like she owned the damn day. Everything was set, the vows, the music, the promises. I'd planned this day for years, and nothing could go wrong, until the moment everything exploded. Out of nowhere, my best man's phone buzzed. He shot a quick look at it, and without saying much, shoved it into my hand. "Bro, you need to see this. Now," he said, his voice low and urgent. I scrolled through the notifications, my heart pounding hard enough to drown out the church organ. It was a live video, streaming from a number I didn't recognize. I hit play, and couldn't believe my eyes. On the screen was my bride, but not the one I'd known all our planning months. She was in a dingy hotel room, completely naked, with another man standing right beside her. Every second on that screen drilled the knife deeper into my gut. The camera captured every detail, the raw shock in her eyes, the disarray of the room, and the undeniable intimacy between her and this stranger. I couldn't take it. I lost it, and caused absolute chaos right in the middle of the wedding hall. The moment the video hit full screen, I bolted from the altar, leaving a trail of stunned guests in my wake. The hall erupted into shouts and murmurs as I stormed out, ignoring the frantic calls of friends and family trying to calm me down. My best man followed close behind, his face a mask of guilt and confusion. I barely registered his words when I caught a glimpse of my bride's expression on the screen. It wasn't just lust or betrayal, it was something raw and painful. Without thinking, I rushed outside into the cold air, determination set in every step, intent on getting answers. Outside, the reception area was a mess of overturned chairs and panicked guests streaming out into the parking lot. I could see my bride's car idling near the curb, its headlights piercing the twilight. I didn't care about my shoes or the immaculate suit, I just needed to know what the hell was happening. As I reached the car, my phone vibrated with another message. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. "Don't even think about chasing her. There's more to this than you know." I hesitated, caught between fury and curiosity, but anger took the lead. I jumped into my car and sped off, following the taillights of my bride's car like a man possessed. The chase led me through a maze of quiet backroads and neon-lit streets, until I finally pulled up outside a rundown hotel on the edge of town. I parked a block away and watched from a distance as a limo pulled up and a tall, suited figure stepped out. I couldn't make out his face clearly, but something about his posture screamed authority. Meanwhile, inside the hotel lobby, I saw my bride being led away by a couple of men in dark suits. My heart was pounding, and I felt every bit of that shock from the video surge back into me. I dialed my best man, demanding to know what the hell was going on. His voice was shaky when he answered. "Man, I didn't expect this either. I got that video message, but there's something off. It's like someone's staging it." I tried calling her after, but no answer. And the message from before? It said, "Don't stop looking for me," as if she wanted me to know something. His words only made the situation more confusing. I decided to get closer to the hotel. Slipping into the shadows, I walked toward the entrance, my mind racing through every possible scenario. There were too many questions, and the facts didn't add up. I remembered the text message that came earlier. "Don't even think about chasing her. There's more to this than you know." Who would send that? And why? As I lingered near the entrance, I saw someone watching me. A woman, probably in her late 20s, leaning against the wall. She met my gaze for a split second before ducking out of sight. I didn't have time to worry about her. I had to find answers. Inside, the hotel lobby was a stark contrast to the chaos outside. It was quiet, almost eerily so, with a few tired faces milling about near the reception desk. I approached the desk and asked for the room number where my bride was supposed to be. The receptionist gave me a strange look, then typed something into the computer. "Room 312, he said flatly, not meeting my eyes. I thanked him and moved toward the stairs. Every step echoed my racing heartbeat. I wasn't sure what I'd find, but I knew I couldn't turn back now. I found room 312 and paused at the door. I could hear muffled voices inside, and the sound of soft music, nothing like what I'd expected from a hotel setting. I knocked lightly. "Hello?" I called, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. The door swung open slowly, and there she was, my bride. But she wasn't in the disheveled state I'd seen on the video. She looked haggard, her eyes red from crying, and she clutched a small bag in one hand. There was a man in the room, the same one from the video, but he was sitting on a chair by the window, watching us calmly. He gave me a slight nod, as if to say, "You're finally here." Without wasting a second, I stepped inside. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, voice rough and clipped. My bride didn't speak immediately. She just stared at me, tears welling up in her eyes. Then she said in a low, measured tone, "I didn't want it to come out like this. I'm sorry, I never meant to hurt you." The man by the window cleared his throat and said, "There are things you don't understand, man. We've been trying to help her for a long time." Felt the anger surge back, but I forced myself to remain calm. "Help her? How? What's this all about?" My bride took a deep breath. "It started months ago. I met someone at work. He was charming, and I was just curious. Things got out of hand quickly, and I ended up in a situation I couldn't control. I thought I could fix it before the wedding, but it spiraled. I ended up meeting someone else who promised to help me clean it all up." She paused, her eyes darting between me and the man. "That's him," she said, nodding toward the seated man. "But it wasn't what you think. It was all a setup." I frowned. "A setup? You mean you planned this whole thing?" The man interjected. "Not planned exactly. More like forced. There are people in this city who will do anything for money and power. They targeted her because she got in over her head with the wrong crowd. I was sent to help her escape that life." I felt my head spinning. Everything I thought I knew about this day, about our love, was being thrown out the window. "So you're saying that the video was staged?" I asked slowly. "That this whole wedding was a cover for something much darker?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I couldn't let them control me any longer. I tried to get out, to get help, but they were always one step ahead. I thought if I could end things before the wedding, I'd have a chance to start over without them in my life." I stared at her, trying to piece together the half-truths and fragments of a story that that felt more like a nightmare than reality. "And you never told me any of this?" I spat, voice trembling with a mix of betrayal and disbelief. "I was trying to protect you. I didn't want you dragged into this mess." At that moment, the door to the room slammed open. Another man entered, wearing a suit that looked expensive and a badge that read security. He looked between us, his expression unreadable. "I'm here to escort you out," he said, firmly addressing me. "This area is now under lockdown. You need to leave immediately." I looked at my bride, desperate for answers, but she only shook her head as if in resignation. I couldn't tell if she was relieved or terrified. Before I could protest, the security guard grabbed my arm and led me out of the room. Once in the hallway, I yelled back, "Wait, what the hell is happening here?" But my voice was swallowed by the murmurs of other guests and hotel staff. I was shoved into a waiting car and driven through dark streets. I kept repeating the questions in my head, each one more urgent than the last. Who were these people? What had my bride gotten herself into? And why was I being forced out like some criminal? I ended up at a nondescript building on the outskirts of town, where I was left alone on a cold, empty sidewalk. I pulled out my phone and called my best man. His voice was barely audible on the other end. "Dude, you need to calm down. I'm trying to help you, but you're not making it any easier. Look, I've got some info, but it's gonna sound insane." I pressed him to continue, desperate for clarity in a mess that was quickly spiraling out of control. He explained that he'd been contacted by someone claiming to represent a private security firm. Apparently, there was a ring of high-stakes extortion running in the background, and my bride had stumbled right into it. The firm was known for its discreet operations, cleaning up messes for those who paid the right price. They'd identified her as a liability once she started talking to the wrong people at work. The live video was a warning, a message to her, or maybe even to me to back off. But something had gone horribly wrong. I couldn't tell if the best man was telling me the truth, or if he was just as confused as I was. I spent hours on the phone with him, trying to piece together a timeline of events. Every detail felt like a jigsaw puzzle missing half its pieces. According to him, my bride had been in trouble long before the wedding was even planned. She had been pressured by her boss and some shady characters from a company that specialized in digital extortion. They'd been after her for months, and she'd tried to cover it up by keeping secrets from everyone, even me. The best man had always suspected something was off, but he'd never been able to get her to open up. Now, as I sat on that cold sidewalk, every moment of our past together flashed before my eyes. The late-night texts, the secretive phone calls, the odd behavior that I'd chalked up to wedding jitters suddenly seemed like clear signs of a hidden life. I remembered one night, a couple of weeks before the wedding, when she got a call and suddenly ended our conversation abruptly. I'd thought nothing of it, assuming it was just wedding stress. Now I wondered if that call was from one of those extortionists. I thought of the time she'd left early from a dinner with friends, citing some vague emergency. Every memory became a potential clue, and I couldn't help but feel that I'd been blind to what was right in front of me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from an unknown contact. It simply read, "You're in deeper than you know. Trust no one." I forwarded it to my best man, who told me to save it as evidence. I didn't know if it meant anything, but at that moment, every piece of information felt like a drop in an ocean of betrayal and manipulation. After a while, a friend of mine, who wasn't at the wedding, contacted me. He said he'd heard rumors about a secret meeting involving some of the key players in this extortion ring. He insisted that I come to a downtown cafe where he'd be waiting. I had no other choice. If I wanted to understand what was happening, I had to follow the trail. I drove downtown, keeping a low profile and checking over my shoulder constantly. The cafe was dimly lit, with a few patrons scattered around. My friend was already there, leaning back in a booth with a coffee in hand, looking tired and wary. I slid into the booth and wasted no time. "What do you know?" I demanded. He took a deep breath and started explaining. "Word is, the firm behind all this isn't just about cleaning up messes. They're involved in a lot more shady stuff. Money laundering, blackmail, and even corporate espionage. Your bride got mixed up with the wrong people when she started working at that tech firm. They're known for having ties with some big players, and once she realized too much, they made her an example." I listened, each word hitting harder than the last. It wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was part of something much larger and more dangerous than I'd ever imagined. I asked if there was any way out, any chance to salvage anything from this mess. He shrugged, not sure. "But there's a name floating around. A guy known only as the Broker. Supposedly, he's the one pulling the strings behind all of this. Some say he can arrange deals that get you out of sticky situations. Others say he's as dangerous as they come. No one really knows who he is, but if you want answers, you might have to find him." At that point, I wasn't sure if I even wanted answers anymore. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion, betrayal, and raw anger. Yet I had to keep moving forward. I thanked my friend and left the cafe, stepping out into the night with nothing but questions. The cold air hit me hard as I drove back to the outskirts, where I planned to lay low for a bit. I couldn't shake the feeling that every turn I took was leading me deeper into a maze with no exit. Back at the nondescript building where I'd been dropped off, I set up camp in a small motel room. I needed to gather my thoughts and plan my next move. I reviewed every text message, every call log, every scrap of information I'd collected so far. The timeline was a mess. Secret meetings, unexplained absences, a live video that shattered my reality. I decided to call the police, but they dismissed my story as the ramblings of a heartbroken groom. I wasn't in the mood for empty condolences. I needed concrete answers. In the days that followed, I became a one-man wrecking crew, diving headfirst into the chaos. I reached out to old friends, former coworkers, even acquaintances from college, trying to piece together any connection to the tech firm and the extortion ring. I visited the company's headquarters, armed with nothing but my determination and a burning need for the truth. Every door I knocked on, every person I interrogated, only deepened the mystery. I discovered that my bride had been working on sensitive projects and had access to confidential data. It seemed that the company had been under investigation for fraud and corporate espionage for a while, and she might have inadvertently stumbled upon something big. One evening, while sifting through emails on a borrowed laptop at a rundown internet cafe, I found a thread of correspondence between my bride and an unknown contact. The emails were terse and filled with financial figures and technical jargon I barely understood, but one thing was clear. She was trying to protect protect someone, or maybe herself, by transferring data. It all seemed to point to the tech firm's involvement in illegal activities. The more I dug, the more I realized that this wasn't just a case of a woman straying on her wedding day. It was a full-blown corporate scandal with dangerous players involved. I began to wonder if my entire relationship had been a lie, a carefully constructed facade to keep me from learning the truth about her secret life. Then came the second twist. One morning, I received a call from a number I recognized. It was the bride's younger brother. He sounded rushed, almost terrified. "I need you to listen to me," he said, barely catching his breath. "There's something you have to know about my sister. She wasn't the only one caught up in this. Our whole family is in danger." I listened intently as he explained that their father had been involved with the tech firm long before she was born, and that the entire family had been entangled in this web of deceit without even realizing it. The extortion ring wasn't just targeting her, it was systematically dismantling families who had crossed paths with the firm in the past. His voice trembled as he recounted how threats had been made against their lives, and how their family business had been manipulated to serve the firm's interests. I felt a sinking realization that the betrayal was even deeper and more personal than I'd thought. It wasn't just about a one-night mistake or an illicit affair. It was a generational scandal with far-reaching implications. I decided to meet with him. We arranged to meet in a quiet diner on the outskirts of the city. Over lukewarm coffee and stale fries, he laid out the facts. The extortion ring had been in operation for decades, and my bride, unwittingly, had become its latest target. Her work had exposed a critical link between her company and several high-ranking officials in the government. According to him, she had been approached by someone promising a way out, a deal that would have allowed her to disappear and start anew. Instead, she got pulled further in, and when she tried to back out, the firm sent in its enforcers to silence her. The live video was meant to serve as a public warning, a final message before everything came crashing down. I listened, my mind reeling with the implications. All this time, I'd been a pawn in a game I never even knew existed. As the conversation ended, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video message. I opened it cautiously. The video showed a grainy image of a man, face hidden in shadow, speaking directly into the camera. "If you want to save her, if you want to know the truth," he said, "you need to meet me at the old warehouse on 5th Street tonight. Come alone." The message ended abruptly. I was torn between the urge to follow this lead and the fear that I might be walking straight into a trap. But at this point, I didn't have much of a choice. I grabbed my jacket, left the motel, and drove to 5th Street. The warehouse was abandoned, its windows broken and graffiti covering its walls. I parked a few blocks away and approached on foot, every step echoing in the silent night. The building's dark interior was illuminated by a single flickering light. I pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust and the smell of rust. I could hear footsteps ahead and slowed my pace. As I reached the center of the building, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was the man from the video. He introduced himself as someone who had once been part of the extortion ring, but had defected when he realized how deep the corruption went. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "You're looking for answers, right?" he said bluntly. "Then listen up. Your bride was set up from the start. She got involved with the wrong people, and now they're using her to cover their tracks. The tech firm was just a front. The real power lies with a man known as the broker, the one who orchestrates these schemes from behind the scenes." He went on to explain that the broker was a ghost in the system, a master manipulator who controlled not just the extortion ring, but a network of criminal enterprises spanning multiple industries. "Your wedding, your entire life. It's all part of a bigger game," he said. "And now, because you got too close to the truth, you're in danger too." I felt a chill run down my spine. Every word he spoke made it clear that this wasn't just about infidelity or a personal failing. It was a calculated move by powerful people who would stop at nothing to protect their interests. The man handed me a flash drive. "This contains evidence that can bring them down if you're brave enough to use it," he said. "But be warned, once you cross this line, there's no turning back." I took the drive, my mind reeling with the weight of responsibility and the gravity of the situation. The next few days were a blur of paranoia and restless nights. I knew I couldn't go back to my old life. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every unfamiliar face a potential enemy. I started meeting with anonymous sources who claimed to have worked for the tech firm or been victims of its ruthless tactics. One source, a former accountant from the firm, told me that there were secret accounts and offshore funds used to bribe officials. Another, a disillusioned ex-employee, revealed that the extortion ring had connections to organized crime syndicates. Every piece of information was a brick in the wall of a massive conspiracy that I never wanted to be a part of, yet now couldn't escape. As I pieced together the evidence from the flash drive and these anonymous contacts, a pattern began to emerge. My bride's involvement was just one part of a larger scheme to siphon money and data from unsuspecting companies. She had been used as a scapegoat to divert attention from the real culprits. The flash drive contained emails, transaction records, and even surveillance footage that implicated several high-ranking executives. I realized that exposing this network would not only free her from their control, but could potentially bring down a significant criminal enterprise. With renewed determination, I started contacting journalists and independent investigators. I met with a reporter from a local news outlet, someone known for taking on powerful interests. Over several meetings, I handed over the evidence and shared every detail of my ordeal. From the chaos at the wedding to the secret meetings at abandoned warehouses, the reporter listened intently, his eyes dark with understanding as he realized the magnitude of the story. Meanwhile, I continued my own search for the broker. I knew that if I could confront him, maybe I'd finally get the closure I needed. I tracked down leads from the defector at the warehouse and even managed to secure a meeting with someone who claimed to have once been in his inner circle. The meeting took place in a back room of a rundown bar. The man I met was jittery and kept glancing around, as if he expected trouble at any moment. "The broker isn't a person you can just walk up to and ask questions," he told me. "He's always watching, always pulling strings from behind the curtain. But I can tell you one thing, if you're planning to expose this operation, you're going to make some powerful enemies." His words were a stark reminder of the stakes. I left the bar with more questions than answers, but also with a growing sense that my life had irrevocably changed. The investigation began to take its toll. I was constantly constantly looking over my shoulder, and every phone call, every email felt like a potential threat. I even started receiving threatening messages, telling me to back off or suffer the consequences. Yet, the more they tried to silence me, the more determined I became. I pushed through the fear, driven by the need to set things right, not just for me, but for everyone caught in this tangled web of corruption. The wedding day, the chaos, the video, it all became the catalyst for something much bigger than a broken relationship. It became a fight against a system built on lies and exploitation. Then, just when I thought I had reached the brink of despair, something unexpected happened. I got a call from my bride. Her voice was low and trembling as she said, "I need to talk to you. Please, meet me at the old pier." I hesitated, the memories of the betrayal and the chaos still fresh in my mind, but something in her tone made me pause. I agreed, telling her I'd be there in an hour. As I drove to the pier, my mind raced with possibilities. Was this her way of apologizing, or did she have more secrets to reveal? When I arrived, the pier was nearly deserted except for a few seagulls and the sound of crashing waves. I saw her standing alone, her back to me. She turned slowly as I approached, and for a moment, all the anger and pain seemed to melt away. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "I never meant for any of this to happen." She explained that after the extortion ring started targeting her, she was forced into a situation where she had no choice but to appear in that video. The man in the hotel wasn't her lover. He was an intermediary, someone tasked with ensuring that the message was sent. She claimed that she had been trying to protect me by keeping me in the dark, hoping to handle it without involving me. But everything had spiraled out of control. As she spoke, I could see the genuine regret in her eyes. The revelation was a twist I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't a simple case of infidelity, but a manipulation by forces far beyond our control. I listened, conflicted and still hurting, but also starting to see that maybe I had been a pawn in something much larger. The conversation at the pier went on for hours. She detailed how she had been coerced into meeting with the extortionists, how she'd tried to fake the scandal to buy time to figure out an escape plan. According to her, the security guard and the men in suits were not there to harm me, but to keep the situation contained until she could get rid of the threat. Every new piece of information made the whole ordeal feel even more surreal. I realized that the wedding, which was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, had become a battleground for survival against unseen enemies. In the end, she pleaded with me to help her expose the operation, to use the evidence I'd gathered to bring down the network that had ensnared us both. It was a lot to take in. I didn't know if I could ever fully forgive the betrayal or trust her again, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let these shadowy figures win. I decided to work with her. Together, we planned to leak the evidence to as many independent outlets as possible, hoping that the public exposure would force the authorities to take action. We arranged clandestine meetings, shared secure messages, and even used burner phones to communicate. Every step was a risk, but the stakes were too high for either of us to back down. We started meeting with journalists in safe houses and passing on documents in encrypted files. The pace was relentless, and every day brought a new threat. Anonymous calls, suspicious vehicles tailing us, and even break-in attempts at our temporary hideouts. Despite all that, we pressed on. The more we uncovered, the deeper the corruption ran, and the more determined I became to see it through to the end. One night, as I was returning from a meeting with a particularly skeptical journalist, I noticed a car parked at a distance, its headlights off, watching me. I sped up, heart hammering, and took a detour through narrow back alleys. It was the first time I'd felt a genuine chill of fear that wasn't fueled by the initial shock of betrayal. That car turned out to be one of the many silent reminders that someone was always tracking my movements. I never found out who was behind it, but it made me more cautious, more determined to finish what I'd started. I began recording every suspicious encounter, every phone call, and every cryptic message. Slowly, the pieces of the puzzle began to come together, and the extent of the conspiracy became undeniable. Weeks turned into months, and our secret operation gained momentum. The evidence was irrefutable. High-ranking officials, corporate honchos, and even local politicians were implicated in the extortion ring. The story exploded on social media and quickly caught the attention of national news outlets. I became a reluctant whistleblower, thrust into the spotlight as the face of a scandal that no one had seen coming. Amid the chaos, I still had moments of quiet reflection, brief pauses where I tried to make sense of how a wedding day turned into a fight against powerful criminals. I wasn't the same man who had once believed in love and loyalty without question. Every day was a battle, every call and meeting a reminder of the price of truth. Finally, after endless nights of danger and uncertainty, the day came when the authorities could no longer ignore the mountain of evidence. A coordinated raid took place at the headquarters of the tech firm and several related properties. The arrests were swift, and the network of extortionists began to crumble under the weight of public scrutiny. I watched the news coverage in disbelief as the people who had manipulated our lives for so long were hauled off in handcuffs. My bride and I were called in for questioning, and while the experience was invasive and humiliating, it was also a necessary step in clearing our names and exposing the truth. The trial that followed was long and grueling, filled with tense courtroom scenes and relentless media coverage. I stood there, often in silence, as the full extent of the corruption was laid bare for everyone to see. In the end, the verdict was clear. The extortion ring was dismantled, and those responsible faced justice. I never imagined that a single moment of betrayal on my wedding day could lead to such a massive takedown of a criminal network. The experience left scars, both physical and emotional, but it also taught me that sometimes, when everything falls apart, you find a strength you never knew you had. My bride and I eventually went our separate ways, each scarred by the ordeal in our own way. I chose to leave behind the life of chaos and deception, focusing on rebuilding my own sense of trust and integrity. The evidence we'd uncovered was used as a catalyst for wider reforms in corporate governance and law enforcement practices. It was a small victory in the grand scheme of things, but it meant something. Looking back now, I still wonder if that day day was fate, or just a cruel twist of circumstance. I lost the wedding, my marriage, and my naive belief in a fairy tale ending. But I also gained a new perspective, a hardened, realistic view of the world where nothing is ever as simple as it seems. I learned that sometimes love isn't enough to shield you from the dark underbelly of greed and corruption. And while I'll always carry the memories of that shattered day, I also know that every ending is just the start of a new chapter. I'm still here, still fighting my own battles, and still searching for a truth that might one day set me free. In the final reckoning, I resolved to rebuild my life on my own terms, turning the pain of betrayal into a drive for change. I started speaking out about my experience, sharing the story on forums and in interviews, not to seek pity, but to warn others about the hidden dangers that lurk behind every polished facade. The scars remain, permanent reminder of the day my faith in love shattered into 1,000 pieces, but they also serve as a testament to my survival and resilience. I ended the chapter of my wedding with no happy ending, just a raw truth that changed everything. And as I step forward into an uncertain future, I carry the lessons of that day with me. Lessons about trust, the cost of secrets, and the enduring power of truth.